This week on the show, we continue an unparalleled 4-segment presentation, a very special report here on Farm Week, Balancing Act, about a collaborative research project in the Mississippi Delta. We pick up with harvest about to begin before the flooding of the fields.
Usually sometime around late August in through the month of September and early October, it's starting to be time to harvest some crops.
As fall sets in, crops are harvested across the Mississippi Delta, leaving behind empty fields exposed to erosion from wind and rain. This is when the work begins to convert the empty fields into temporary wetlands, creating a retention pond for soil nutrients and allowing microbes to pump them into the air before they're lost downstream.
It's been seasonable weather. It's been 100 degrees for the last week. So the ground is firm and dry, which is really important on this heavy black land.
When these farmers are harvesting in the fall, their main goal is to get their crops, right? This is their livelihood. They want to harvest, they want to have high yields. And then they're going to do some field prep, sort of bed things up. But then once that is done, it is time for them to pump the water onto the field.
The water is on, we're taking water samples. When it rains, Jason Taylor's team and Matt Moore's teams are taking runoff samples from a lot of the fields.
You put boards in the culverts and stop the water up, but you'll get a rain and you'll have a little water flow over, and they water sample and tell you how much soil you're losing. It's really amazing. Just a little bit of flood, just a board or two to slow that runoff keeps a lot of your soil in your field and therefore out of the river and out of the Gulf.
So when we look at runoff samples from flooded versus unflooded fields, we see a significant reduction in the suspended soil particles. I think it's doing a pretty good job of helping hold the soil on the field during major rain events.
So shorebirds have spent the whole summer breeding in the Arctic, and then they are traveling south for the winter to spend their time either Gulf Coast. Some of them stay in the Mississippi Delta region, but most of them might even be traveling as far south as the southern tip of South America.
And we're also counting the birds. We're taking soil cores to measure soil properties. We're counting the invertebrates in the soil.
What you're looking for is an indicator of habitat quality during migration is abundance of food source. And that food source comes largely in the form of these very small worms called chironomids. These are just midge fly larvae, pretty much. And so these birds are picking and probing into these muddy flooded sediments and pulling out those tiny worms and eating just hundreds of them.
So another part of the fieldwork is capturing shorebirds to get estimates of how long they are staying. And that can be difficult just looking at them through binoculars. We've made efforts in recent years to catch them and put radio tags on them that transmit signals to radio towers nearby that we have put up.
We go out usually the day before a banding session and we sort of scope out where the birds are on a field and in what directions they seem to be moving pretty reliably, and then we set up mist nets based on that.
Hold on to it. Let's do this.
I think this is where the issue starts. Those two seem come from that issue pretty good.
Okay.
You want me to hold something?
Hold. Oh my God. Huh. Hey Dick, raise up the white one for me if you wouldn't mind. Yep, good. Even higher. Yep. Really, the exciting part is going out then before dawn. We usually try to get there back out to these agricultural fields at least a couple hours before the sun rises so that we could get out there and set everything up before the shorebirds know that we're there. This means tromping around in these wet, muddy, flooded agricultural fields in the middle of the night.
At first light, the project team heads back to the field to begin its assessment, understanding the extent to which these wetlands provide both food and shelter for multiple bird species. The team's goal is to safely capture the birds, tag them to estimate the length of their stopover at the site, and return them back to the field to resume their journey to the south.
We have to have licensed bird banders who are licensed to capture and handle these birds and put tags on them.
So what we do is one of the ways you can age them is by looking at their feathers on the wing. So like that group of feathers right there are called the median coverts, and see how they've got like sort of creamy edges to them. Yeah. Real buffy. If this was an adult, it wouldn't have those at all. It would appear all one uniform color instead of sort of that scalloped. So this is a young bird. That means it was born this past year, somewhere up around the Arctic Circle.
Oh, wow. Give it a second. We're doing it because we care about these birds and we really want to understand their biology and how long they're staying.
I am the wizard.
Really, though, it's not just about the birds. In fact, the inspiration for this project was to find out what are all the other consequences of these temporary wetlands, these crop field floods.
Wetlands are key to our survival here in the Delta. One way to put it is we could be like the Motel 6 for birds. We leave the light on for them when we do these early floods.
For all its benefits, flooding these fields comes at a cost. Running the pumps requires electricity or fuel, the cost of which is assessed to the farmer. To achieve buy-in across the Delta, Dr. Hoeksema and the team must clearly articulate the benefits for both the land and the wildlife that depend on it during the winter season.
The fall and winter flooding and providing habitats for the birds, that's just kind of fun to do, and it is a little bit of work, but it's worth the effort.
This project is trying to quantify a lot of that, trying to quantify the pros and cons, the costs and benefits of engaging in this particular practice, so that we can really be clear with farmers about how and why they should consider trying this.
What may look like a dead field to you and me is anything but. Under the surface, millions of tiny organisms provide a meal to migratory birds, and bird droppings help fertilize the fields for the next growing season. Dr. Hoeksema and his team are researching the ways in which the fields and the birds benefit from this arrangement. It's a race against time before the fields are drained in preparation for the New Year's crops.
We constructed these exclosure plots. And these exclosure plots are to keep the birds out. So we can take the field setting, what's happening in real life, without the bird influence, and keep them out. And then we have an adjacent plot that we've marked off, allowing the birds to enter and basically do whatever they're going to do naturally. Whether they're going to enter the plots and stir up the soils just by moving around, digging we're calling them macropores when they dig in and eat the chironomids, which are the little bugs that we're studying.
Collecting the sediment core, bringing it back here, running the incubations, running all the samples in the lab, and getting to the point where you actually have positive benefits in that data that are increasing the sustainability of working landscapes is pretty satisfying.
we can measure if there is greater numbers of nitrogen or less numbers of nitrogen. We can use that information to kind of say like, okay, within this core, from start to finish, there's more or less denitrification happening or more or less nitrogen fixation.
We start to collect our final samples, and then the farmers pull the boards on those water control structures and drain off those fields. There's a couple of months there where mainly the farmers are hoping those fields will dry out and be ready for spring planting in maybe late March, early April.
As soon as it dries up here in March is a good planting window for us, and then we'll be growing the crops during the year. Our farm that's involved in this project is on the Sunflower River, and we do have river pumps that we can pump surface water directly from the river over to irrigate our crops there. So we're on that corn-soybean rotation.
With the land dried from the winter flooding, it's time to plant this year's crop, ensuring the soil conditions are optimal for seeding.
Here, let's check these real quick. Yeah, check that one. I'll check this one. We're gonna go on the cross.
I think scientists interacting more with farmers, it could be a really useful thing, and this project has allowed for that, at least for me personally, as someone who didn't primarily interact with the farming community before. This project's really enlightened me quite a bit as a scientist.
Well, one component of this project is to engage in farmer-to-farmer networking, and for us to connect with the farming community so that we can talk about these management practices and their pros and cons, the outcomes that are possible. We've begun to engage in those events. We've held on-site farm events with farmers and also with conservation professionals so that they can talk to each other, so that they can all learn about what are the options for ways to implement these practices. As a result of the Sunflower River Basin project, what I'm hoping is that we will have a richer toolbox of solutions for diverse challenges that we face, including the challenge of producing food for a growing population, producing clean water, supporting biodiversity, and supporting a healthy environment for animals and for people.
I think this project is good too, because it does keep everyone mindful of what's going on in your farm all season long.
Growing up on a farm and being a farmer all of my adult life, I've learned that it's the blocking and tackling. You have to do the basics well and take care of things today so that they will be in shape for you in the future.
Work continues on assessing the project's benefits for the land and the wildlife, but Dr. Hoeksema and his team are encouraged by the research results so far. Seems a simple flooding of the fields in the Mississippi Delta just might restore the balancing act of using these lands for both humans and wildlife. I'm Mike Russell. Thanks again for watching this Farm Week special report. It may be a while before researchers have a complete grasp of the outcome of this project. In the meantime, the implications are intriguing.